Honestly, watching the Nottingham Forest fans going through the stages of grief over the inevitable loss of Morgan Gibbs-White is as hilarious as it is just plain sad. They are a massive club historically, but the small fry way that their chairman is acting is making their fans go absolutely crazy on social media, and it is fascinating to watch. I'll bring you all the latest on what is now turning from a saga into an eminently bingeable soap opera. Meanwhile, more exciting potential signings have been leaked, and are Spurs about to get big money for one of our Europa League starting final heroes? All this and more on today's daily Tottenham transfer news. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a like on YouTube. Please do press that subscribe button and press the bell as well to get notifications whenever I release some content. Also, guys, you can become a member of the channel. Just £1 a month really helps me make this daily stuff for you. All the details are in the description box below, but let's get started. Oh my word, what is there to say about this Morgan Gibbs-White soap opera? It's really unbelievably fascinating. I've been making TikToks about it, and obviously you've seen my videos, I'm sure, if you're a regular watcher. And it is just like watching a car crash, really, because Nottingham Forest fans are just so determined that somehow he's going to either end up staying at the club, which also, by the way, they're saying they now don't want because he's a snake. I mean, how is he a snake? He literally hasn't done anything. You know, at the very worst, I guess you'd say his agent is likely to have let loose the news that he had a £60 million release clause. But for me, you know, that is Nottingham Forest's fault for allowing that release clause to go in the contract. It's a small fry way of dealing with things. I don't know if Tottenham under Daniel Levy have ever put a financial release clause in one of their players' contracts. And if you don't put one in, you don't suffer in this way. So yeah, the Forest fans are kind of switching from, oh, we don't want him anyway, to, oh, he's going to stay. But they all seem totally sure, no matter what they see, that it's Tottenham who are somehow in the wrong. And I haven't seen any expert whatsoever. For instance, I watched Stefan Borson yesterday, who's the big financial expert. I watched him talk about it on TalkSport and say how, oh, you know, Tottenham aren't going to get him for the release clause money. They're going to have to pay extra. How are they going to have to pay extra? Clearly, Vinay Venkatesham and Daniel Levy are very confident. They probably, do you know what? They've probably even seen the contract clauses. They've probably even seen the small print. And they are very confident that they have just simply put in the bid of the money that it will take to trigger that release clause. And so far, everything that's come out of Nottingham Forest doesn't counteract that. Yesterday, they put us on, they sent a letter apparently to Morgan Gibbs-White's agent and Tottenham Hotspur, putting us on legal action or legal standby or legal watch. But that is still doing nothing. What have you done, lads? You've sent a letter. You haven't made a formal complaint. You've threatened to make a formal complaint. Well, the reason you haven't made a formal complaint is because you know there is nothing legal that you can complain about. And all you're doing is stalling for time in the hope, the vain hope, that Tottenham Hotspur will come back with a bid that is more than 60 million. Now, something came out yesterday that I hadn't really been aware of, which is apparently Manchester City had made a bid of £80 million for Gibbs-White just a few weeks earlier. But Gibbs-White wasn't sure about going to Man City, I think because of potentially a lack of game time. They're the reports that I've heard. And so if that is the case, you can absolutely see why Nottingham Forest are fuming about the fact that they are now legally obliged to let Morgan Gibbs-White be bought by Tottenham Hotspur for £60 million. But once again, despite the fact that I can understand why they'd be fuming, they allowed the clause to go in the contract. So, you know, it's just a classic example, isn't it, of someone, and in this case, you know, their chairman, Marinakis, getting really angry and claiming it's everybody's fault except his own. But the reality is, when you get super angry like that, it's always because there's a part inside you that knows that you are to blame. And that's where the anger comes from, even though you are shouting and screaming from the rooftops that that's not it, that it's actually someone else's fault, that you've had your pants pulled down, that someone has broken the law, the legals. Well, I will continue in these videos to speak honestly about how Tottenham have not done anything wrong. And until I see suddenly, or we hear some caveats that have been put into that contract that Tottenham weren't aware of, and that Sky Sports haven't talked about, then the reality is that Nottingham Forest are just stalling for time, and I think it's counterproductive to them. They should be just accepting their fate, taking the money. They'd have £115 million burning a hole in their pocket from the sales of Anthony Elanga last week and Morgan Gibbs-White this week. Reinvest it. And interestingly, yesterday there was a big link for Nottingham Forest's interest in Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa. Now, Jacob Ramsey, of course, a player, a midfielder who's been on Tottenham's list for a long time. So it's clear that they are succession planning, and they're probably stalling for time with this deal for Morgan Gibbs-White to go to Spurs so they can get their ducks in a row in terms of replacement. And probably, and this is how it works a lot in these deals, trying to get a bid accepted by Aston Villa before Tottenham get Gibbs-White, because Aston Villa will look at it and say, well, you've got £115 million burning in your pocket, so we're going to up our price for Jacob Ramsey. And that is just, I'm afraid, the way that elite football goes. And Marinakis has to realise it. He has to learn, because even though some Forest fans are, especially on social media, being like, our owner is protecting us, our owner, has the best interest in the club. No. He is making your club look small fry. He's making your club look embarrassing. So many social media videos I see from fans of all clubs just being like, what is that guy all about? And you don't, one thing about Daniel Levy, he has a big portion of the Tottenham fan base who have not liked him for a long time and been quite vocal about it. But no other fans of other clubs look at Daniel Levy and think he is a bad chairman. They look at him and say, wow, he has run that club sustainably. He has run that club well. He has grown that club through infrastructure growth. And it's just not, for me, it's not a good look to have a kind of chairman who is a laughing stock. Newcastle had one for so long with Mike Ashley, where it was just so clear that he did not care about that club. Well, Marinakis does care about Nottingham Forest, but he just goes about it in just a bit of a naive way, in my opinion. Anyway, let's go through the latest reports. A bit of a rant there from me on the Morgan Gibbs-White situation. But Nottingham Forest, as I mentioned, have now written to Tottenham and Gibbs-White's agent, this is according to Rob Dorset from Sky, putting them on legal notice, warning them they're considering legal action over what they consider is an illegal approach and breach of confidentiality. Well, once again, the breach of confidentiality cannot be of Tottenham's doing, because they were not in the room when that contract with that release clause was signed. An illegal approach? I mean, how can it be an illegal approach? Presumably Tottenham just sent through the bid. And I believe, bizarrely, that the club-to-club bidding process is still maybe done on faxes these days. I'm not sure. Maybe I've got that wrong, but I remember seeing a documentary and being like amazed that they were still using faxes relatively recently. But either they sent through an email with the official bid on, or a fax, and that's not an illegal approach, is it? That's just hearing about the release clause, because realistically, I think Morgan Gibbs-White's agent has told other clubs about it and then sending their bid through. Anyway, Tottenham believe, according to Sky Sports, that they have done nothing wrong and they remain interested in completing the deal for Morgan Gibbs-White. Exactly. That is basically Tottenham, Daniel Levy and Vinay sitting back, leaning back on their deck chairs, on their sun loungers, just going, we've thrown the grenade in, we've sent our official bid, happy to be patient and watch what happens, happy to watch Marinakis embarrass himself, happy to watch the Nottingham Forest fans go spare, happy to watch Sky Sports News do endless hourly bulletins based on Nottingham Forest leaks saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we are, we're putting you on legal notice, which means nothing, because Tottenham are so confident that they have got everything correct legally in this, and they know that nothing will come off it. As I said, an example of it yesterday, breaking news in the middle of the day yesterday was Forest adamant that Gibbs-White is not going anywhere. Well, dude, you can't be adamant that he's not going anywhere because you've literally put a release clause in. Again, from Sky yesterday, middle of the day, Forest consider the deal to take Morgan Gibbs-White to Spurs to be off, but they are yet to submit a formal complaint to the Premier League regarding Tottenham's conduct when chasing Gibbs-White. Tottenham's conduct has been professional, mate. Professional. It's Marinakis' conduct and Nottingham Forest as a whole, their conduct, because presumably Marinakis is just shouting throughout the hallways of the city ground or the training ground, telling their social media team and telling people in the boardroom to leak this stuff and to in the social media team's instance, to post as many videos with Morgan Gibbs-White at training as possible. It's like, it's small fry, lads. You've lost. Just move on. Move on. So there was a bit of a deep dive yesterday from Sky Sports into the kind of confidentiality of the contract and the dispute and stuff. So I thought this was probably worth reading just to kind of get an idea of the legalities of it. It said this: concerning GibbsWhite's current contract, legally there is a conflict between the rights of the employer, Nottingham Forest, and those of the employee, Morgan Gibbs-White himself, represented by his agents. Forest have a contractual agreement for the terms of Gibbs-White's contract, and specifically the level of his release clause, to be kept confidential. So if that has been breached, they have a legal case. But as I've mentioned, they have a legal case against the people who breached it. And who could have breached it? Not Tottenham Hotspur, because they weren't in the room, only the agent or the player. But also, just to add to that, most likely is that the agent or the player will claim that they didn't breach it at all, and that actually it has been leaked from the club side, because no one's going to be able to prove it. The Premier League are not going to go through Morgan Gibbs-White's phone records or email records or his agents, and Nottingham Forest won't be able to prove that somebody their end, for instance, I don't have evidence to back this up, but who recently became sporting director at Nottingham Forest, head of sport, head of everything, football-wise? Edu. Where was Edu previously sporting director? Arsenal. Who was previously CEO at Arsenal? Vinay Venkatesham. So who's to say, hypothetically, that Edu and Vinay Venkatesham weren't having a meal or a phone call or a WhatsApp exchange where, Edu trusted Vinay Venkatesham so much that he said, oh, well, actually, we're working on a new contract for Morgan Gibbs-White because we've got this £60 million release clause. And Vinay Venkatesham, as a, I'm talking totally hypothetically here, but it's very possible. Vinay Venkatesham is ruthless, slaps in a £60 million bid. It's possible. It could happen. Anyway, going on to these legals. Conversely, Gibbs-White has a contractual agreement that if another club is prepared to pay a certain transfer fee, in this case £60 million, he can leave the City ground. He has a potential legal claim there too. So basically, if he wanted to be really strong about it, and I don't know if this would ever happen because, it might, but I can only think of kind of Pierre Van Hooijdonk back at Nottingham Forest back in the day, ironically, actually, where he threatened to sue them. But he could potentially sue Nottingham Forest for keeping him at the club when his release clause has been triggered. Neither side, it goes on to say, neither side wants to see this end up in the courts, but both sides have that as a possibility in the background. So what's next? The result is the current stalemate. If Gibbs-White really wants to join Tottenham, with all reports suggesting he does, with him turning up at training in white and navy blue, which some people might say, oh, that's just coincidence. Is it? Even if it is, let's say on the off chance that is just bad luck and coincidence for Nottingham Forest, that would be the dumbest thing to do. That would be the dumbest thing to do because, of course, it would wind up Nottingham Forest fans and excite Tottenham Hotspur fans. Anyway, if he really wants to join Tottenham, it may be that he has to bring legal action against Forest, claiming a breach of contract to try to force a move. Exactly. There is no indication that he's prepared to do that currently. And in fact, he returned to pre-season training as scheduled. Of course he did. He's a professional. He knows that this thing is going to play out. He will realistically also, by his representatives, have Tottenham saying to him, just chill out, mate. It's taking a bit longer than we thought, but we want you. We believe in you. It will happen. And this is just, ineptitude and immaturity from Nottingham Forest's chairman, and it will have to end relatively soon. It goes on to say, alternatively, it could be that Spurs are prepared to increase their offer for the player and pay an amount above his release clause to try to placate Forest and reopen lines of communication. Good luck with that, lads. Good luck with that. Let's think about this realistically. Daniel Levy will be like, no. Why? We've seen, like I said earlier, we've seen the contract clause. Know the details. We have bid what we know we're allowed to bid to speak to the player. I do wonder whether with Vinay Venkatesham as CEO now and taking over, all reports suggesting he's taking over from the football side from Daniel Levy, whether Venkatesham will want to kind of massage the relationship with Nottingham Forest so that it's okay going forward as well. And maybe he'll be putting some pressure on Daniel Levy to try and do that to kind of reopen the lines of communication with Forest. But I imagine Levy will be pretty stubborn on this one. He knows his business. He loves, like I said in yesterday's video, he loves to kind of show how well he knows business, how well he knows the Premier League, how long he's been doing it, all of his experience. So I would be surprised if that happened. And that's why I feel like Spurs currently just sitting back and waiting to see what's next. It goes on to say, again, there's no indication at this stage that Spurs are prepared to do that, and there is no dialogue between the two clubs. It is also possible that another club takes advantage of the impasse and comes in with a separate offer for the player. As I mentioned earlier, Manchester City showed an interest in Gibbs-White earlier in the window, but have not pursued that interest. Neither Forest nor Spurs have commented on these latest developments. I mean, I guess what would be fascinating is if another club came in and just bid the 60 million release clause, because that would then put Forest in a absolute bind. What are they then going to do? Well, they can't have a go at that club because it's in the public domain now that he has the £60 million release clause. So what are they going to do? Allow him to speak to another club but not Spurs? That would be denying freedom of movement. And that would be ridiculous. And this is the problem that Nottingham Forest have. Anyway, that has been a 15-minute rant about the Morgan Gibbs-White situation, but I wanted to keep you guys up to date. I'll move on to some of the other transfer news, guys. Before I do, please give this video a like if you haven't already on YouTube. The more likes we get, the more Spurs fans see it in their suggested videos. Really value your support, guys. And also, if you're not already a subscriber, do press that subscribe button for daily Tottenham transfer news throughout this summer. It's only going to get more exciting. Everything I'm hearing is that Tottenham are looking to spend as much as £300 million this window because we've got some more investment into ENIC. And as I'll speak about later in the episode, there are due to be some big outs as well, with maybe as much as £100 million coming in to the club to re-spend on players. So yeah, do check that out. Also, please do give me a nomination for the Football Content Awards if you like my stuff. I've put the link in the description box below and suggested a couple of the categories that maybe you could nominate me for. All right, another player who has been on Spurs' list for a while now. Apparently, Tottenham will rival Inter Milan to sign Belgian defender Koni de Winter. There's been contact between Genoa, his club, and Spurs. Genoa apparently would be willing to accept 22 million for the Belgian international centre-back. He's 6'3". He can play across the back line and even in defensive midfield. So this player is, I think, potentially a backup for our fullbacks. Obviously, we have Jed Spence and Pedro Porro, and we have Destiny Udogie. Spence can play right or left. And what we need is one more potential fullback. And ideally, I think for Thomas Frank, it would be a player who can play centre half as well. So maybe that's where De Winter could fit in. And at £22 million, that would be a steal for a Belgian international. In fact, he's played 4 times for Belgium. He broke into professional football with Juventus's under-23 teams. He had loan spells at Empoli and Genoa. And after a strong 23-24 campaign, he made his move permanent to Genoa for €8 million back in summer last year. Then this season in Serie A, 24 league starts, 3 goals, only 6 yellow cards, pretty decent disciplinary for a centre-back, 82% passing accuracy, 56% ground duels success rate, and 7 clean sheets whilst he was playing in Serie A. As I said, 4 caps for Belgium, versatile and physically dominant, known for his strong dueling, both aerial and on the ground, his composure on the ball, and positional intelligence. And they are the kind of attributes that Thomas Frank will appreciate and why he's still on our list. Mail Sport have said that Spurs do hold an interest, as we talked about a lot in Adam Wharton, but it's not moving along as it stands. As I've mentioned, I feel like if that was going to happen, it would probably be later in the window due to the fact that Crystal Palace are fighting legally to try and get their place back in the Europa League. As it stands, they have been demoted to the Conference League. Tottenham are interested in signing the little powerhouse, Liverpool attacking midfielder Harvey Elliott during this transfer window. That's according to former Premier League scout Mick Brown. Tottenham and Newcastle are into him, and Spurs looking to test the waters with an offer. I've spoken about him before, really like him as a player, had an excellent England under-21 tournament, scored loads of goals, always scores when he plays for Liverpool, but just does not get enough minutes. For me, it would be a really interesting signing. I'm not sure exactly where Thomas Frank would see him fitting in. He's a little diminutive for my liking. I think Frank likes quite physical players, but let's see what happens. Now, some surprising news coming from Brazil. Palmeiras, who are actually my Brazilian team, they are flush with cash, having done well in the World Club Cup, and are interested in signing Richarlison. Tottenham apparently have put a £55 million asking price on his name. Now, do I think Palmeiras are going to pay £55 million? I do not. But if they've got a bit of money from that Club World Cup that they weren't expecting to have, then Tottenham will know that, and they will be pushing their price upwards. I know that Richarlison wants to be in everybody's mind so that he can be number 9 for Brazil at the World Cup next summer. and maybe a move back to Palmeiras would suit him on that basis. So keep an eye on that one. Richarlison is front and center of all the Tottenham social media business at the moment. He doesn't look like he wants to leave. He brings great morale to the changing room. I'm really fascinated to see what Thomas Frank thinks of him and whether he'll have him in his plans. But I do think he's one of our, along with Basuma and Sonny and Romero, if he were to kick up a fuss about leaving, he's one of the players that we could get money for. And I would be looking, if we got anywhere £35 million for Richarlison, I think we should be pretty happy with that. Kota Takai received his work permit yesterday, so he finally started training with the team, and the social media team at Spurs put some pictures up of him. I do wonder, though, realistically, with those work permit ones, surely, let me know what you think in the comments, but surely those players kind of train, but they're just telling the social media team, don't post any pictures of him until we get the work permit through. Surely. I mean, I know it would be dangerous, but I don't think realistically like the Department for Employment are going to be checking that, but could be wrong. And then just a final bit of news. The famous Bill Nicholson Gates have returned home to Tottenham Hotspur, and work has begun on their reinstalling at White Hart Lane 2.0. The gates and accompanying hoarding are planned for completion ahead of the new season. I think for me, another example of Vinay Venkatesham trying to show and grow and build the relationship between the club and the fans again. It's so important for him. He's putting steps in place, and I'm impressed with it. And those gates have been waiting to be reinstalled since 2019, and Levy, I guess, has just had it on the back burner. Venkatesham has come in and seen that relationship between the club and the fans as vitally important, and he is putting steps in place, and I'm here for it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, please do give the video a like if you haven't already. Do subscribe to the channel. Press that bell button for notifications whenever I give any of my content. And I promise you, I haven't done any live streams this week yet, but I promise you, as soon as something big happens with Spurs and the Morgan Gibbs-White deal or any deals, I will be straight on a live stream to jump on and discuss it with you guys. Enjoy your Wednesday. Come on, you Spurs.